The first day of teaching can be overwhelming. You may not be sure where to start, especially when it comes to behavior expectations. In today's video, I'm going to break down the essentials of behavior management for a great first day, great first week, and hopefully the start to a great first year. Our goal as teachers is to empower students to be responsible for their own behavior. Let me explain what that looks like. We teach students with procedures and routines and systems how they can create their own behavior. And so as a teacher, your goal is to set up these systems and routines so that students can access them and know what to expect and what to do. When thinking about classroom expectations, I'm going to do it from beginning of the class to the end of the class. When students enter your class, of course, the first day of school, you are at the door welcoming them, and then you are directing the students to the board where you have a seating chart. Now, make sure you have a seating chart already prepared. This is a really important part of teaching. Students need to know there is structure to your classroom and that you expect certain things. I believe it's also important for you to have the chart on the board and you not telling them because, again, you're creating that sense of students are responsible for their own behavior. They are responsible for finding their seat and finding their spot. Now, as soon as they walk into the room, not only should they be finding their seat, but there should also be instructions on the board for what they should be doing for their bell work. Having bell work on the first day sets the tone that your classroom is a place to work, and you expect students as soon as they walk in to start that process. If you're not sure how to do bell work, I have a video that you can check out right here. Once the students have entered the classroom and you are in front of the class, you are going to explain to them the bell work situation. If they haven't gotten started already, you want to explain where they're going to get their materials and how you expect them to behave when they walk in the classroom. At this point, it's also important to show your whiteboard layout. Again, I will link a video here, but hopefully you have your learning target and agenda and materials up on the board and explain to students when you walk into class, these are the things you're going to look for. If you're not sure what's happening today, look on the board. And it will save you so much effort because oftentimes students will come into class and say, what are we doing? Or what do I need? And you can, instead of having to tell how many students you have, what's going on, you can literally just point to the board. And then from then on, they should know, hey, I should look at the board. And if they forget, you just point to the board and you have it already done. So with this beginning of the class expectations, you are both modeling and explaining as class begins. Then you'll move into your class expectations, and I call those the middle of class expectations. And the middle of the class expectations are, what do you expect students to do while they're in your class? Now, these are in no particular order. I'm going to go through the ones that I would go through. So the first thing I always tell my students is that I have a seating chart and I expect them to stay in their assigned seat unless I share otherwise. I also share that students need to raise their hand before they ask a question and that when teacher is talking, there are voices off. And you can do this in a lot of fun ways, or you can just be straightforward. However you want to do it is fine, but you need to make sure this is clear. As a new teacher, you may think this is obvious, but I'm telling you right now, it is not. You have to say everything you expect. It's really important that you make your expectations crystal clear because students will rise to what you expect of them, but they need to know exactly what that is. One of the things that I always have on my board of expectations is respect. And respect covers a lot of things, so I always delve into that on the first day. For me, respect really comes down to respecting each other with our words and our actions. So respect looks like using kind words to each other and to the teacher. Respect looks like keeping our hands and arms to ourselves. Respect even kind of means being prepared for class because we respect ourselves enough to have everything we need when the bell rings. So respect is this big overarching thing that I always use in that first conversation. Another thing that I like to cover for the middle of class portion is when is a good time to use the bathroom. And this might seem like tedious, but it's not, because if you're teaching and someone raises their hand and is like, you're thinking they're going to answer a question and instead they're like, can I go to the bathroom? It really distracts from the flow of your own lesson and like your flow of teaching, and it distracts all the students who were engaged in what you were talking about. So make the expectation that students, however you want to do it, go to the bathroom, use the procedure that you want. That's the middle of class. Now let's move into the end of class routines and procedures. So the first thing is to explain to students how you expect them to put their materials away. If they are using things from your classroom, depending on what you're teaching, you want to explain where books are going to go or materials are going to go and how you expect that to happen. Then you also want to explain how they're going to turn in completed work. You need to have a spot in your classroom set aside for how you're going to turn in their work. The last part of the end of class is how you expect students to be dismissed. Depending on your school and your expectations, this will be up to you. But for example, for me, dismissal looks like you are in your assigned seat until the bell rings. unless there's something different or, unusual. I don't want students lining up at the door. I don't want students backpacks on. I just want them sitting down until the bell rings. I'm teaching from bell to bell. And so depending on what your dismissal routine is, you want to explain that. In younger grades, I find that sometimes teachers will dismiss by table or by group, and that's also really great for dismissal routines as well. After you've explained to students your expectations for the beginning, middle, and end of class, you're also going to want to share what happens if those expectations aren't met. In an ideal world, students would just follow expectations and procedures all the time and life would be perfect. But we live in a world where that's not the case. So your role as a teacher is to facilitate these systems and to make sure they're working. And if it's not, you have to kind of monitor and modify for students. The word I'm going to use is consequences. And I'm hesitant to use that word, but I'm going to use it. But what it really is if you're really thinking about it, for yourself as a teacher, is you're reinforcing certain behaviors. And reinforcement means that you're giving positive reinforcement for certain things and maybe a negative reinforcement for others. So let's look at the negative consequences or reinforcements you're going to give if a student decides this is not something they want to follow. The first thing you're going to do is give a warning. And this is a really easy way to just be like, hey, that's not okay, or did you forget this? And you can do it in a kind and positive way, especially if it's their first time. And you're going to have that first week students making mistakes. They might forget. They're in a lot of classes and they might forget that your class has a different rule. So I like to give them the benefit of the doubt that first week and give them the verbal warning in a kind and positive way. If the verbal warning is not enough and the student continues to exhibit the behavior, I would move into a behavior reflection sheet. This can again look different from school to school. The schools that I've been in often have something called buddy rooms, where students would take their reflection sheet, go to another classroom, fill it out without the distraction of the peers that might be causing them the issue, and come back, give it back to me, and I'll have a conversation with the student and be like, hey, are you ready to come back? Are you on board with everything? And oftentimes they're like, yeah, I'm sorry, right? And then I will make the choice based on the reflection and the conversation I've had with that student to decide if I'm going to call home or not. If the student is pretty compliant and it's just like, yeah, I'm just having a hard day or whatever, I probably won't call home, because if it's the first time, I'll be like, let's see where it goes. If the student comes back with an attitude and, it's a huge issue and still doesn't have the behavior that I'm looking for, then I will call home and explain what happened that day. If this is a chronic behavior, like the student continually disrupting class, then I would write a referral, because at this point the student is truly being insubordinate, and if it's distracting the whole class, that's a problem, because I can't teach and the students can't learn. As a teacher, we never want to write referrals. We never want to do those things, but it's important that we respect the rest of the class and their ability to learn. And if one student is causing a disruption to the point where we can't learn because that student has been given a warning, behavior, maybe even call home, and they're just continuing to do this behavior, then there needs to be some more intervention, potentially from the office. Majority of my students never get there because I have my procedures and routines, and I'm modifying and giving warnings to make sure they understand it. And I'm really supporting those every single day. But unfortunately, you're going to have potentially a few students who just want to push the boundaries, and you're going to have to make a stand and say, nope, that is not okay. And that's the line. Those are my consequences, like reinforcements that I would explain to students so that they know how I'm going to reinforce the systems and procedures that I have in place. Teachers will often ask me, well, how do I actually do this? How do I share these expectations? Well, if you're a first year teacher and you're not sure, just share them, okay? You don't have to be super creative or fun. If you want to be, as you get more into it, you can make a scavenger hunt or, all the things. But if you're a first year and you're watching this right now, just share these. Put them in your syllabus and just share. The basis is that you get these out there and that you continue to reinforce them throughout your first day, first week, and first year. And if you want to know more about first day essentials, check out this playlist. I'm Annie, and I believe you've got this.